What's up, everybody? It's Jonathan Mallard and Ryan Faloona here, and we got coffee, we got stocks, we got conference calls on Benzinga Pro. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the conference call calendar on Benzinga Pro. Ryan, it's great to see you. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. That little commercial before we come on just it ramps me up every single day. The funk is just too good. So I'm doing really good. Had to listen to the conference call today. Thanks for the setup there. It's a good day so far.
Awesome. What conference call were you listening to?
So I was listening to the conference call for GoGo's earnings report this morning. So GoGo reported earnings before the market opened today, and the conference call started shortly after they reported earnings. One of the things that I was really interested in is kind of the debt refinance that they're going through. And oftentimes there's questions from analysts or some type of color that the CEO or other management executives are going to talk about on calls like this. And that was the case today. One of the reasons why I want to demonstrate this is because I don't listen to every conference call for every stock that I own. I probably should. I don't. But one of the things about conference calls is that oftentimes you have to go find the investor relations page. You have to go to the company's page, dig around to find investor relations, then find the conference call, then make sure you're listening to the live one instead of some replay or something like that. The Benzinga Pro just makes it much faster. It's just super easy. So I wanted to demonstrate how I actually got on the conference call today, because I'm sure that there are other users out there holding stocks and might want to listen to some of the color that's discussed on those calls. And we make it really easy in Pro. So
awesome. Let's take a look.
All right, let's do it. So you and I have talked a lot about the different calendars in Pro, and that's where we're going to start today. We're going to click on the calendar tool. It's going to default to earnings, but we're going to go ahead and change it to conference call. It's worth noting while we're on the earnings here, since I'm trying to listen to a conference call about earnings, I can also very easily get the earnings numbers here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and sort this here, today's numbers. Oh, we got a top and bottom line beat. Okay, awesome. That's really good to know. I can also do the same thing with guidance. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to go to conference calls. It's already filtered by GoGo. And you can see here is today's date, and here is a link to the webcast. Now, if you needed to call in, if you weren't sitting in front of a computer, if you just happen to have access to a phone and you wanted to call in and listen, maybe you have a headset, or maybe you're working outside and have some earbuds, or whatever the case is, we also give you the numbers here, both for US and international, as well as the access code to access that call so that you can actually listen to it on the phone. This is not how I did it. I actually listened to the webcast. So I just clicked this link, takes me right to the page that I needed to go to. There's volume and play controls down here. Now the call's over now, so you're not hearing anything, but generally you hear elevator music, and then you hear the executives come on and deliver their report. So it was a great call to listen to, and it was just made very, very easy to get to. I didn't even have to think about it, right? I just come into this, I click a link, bang, I'm right there, I'm ready to go. So it's an excellent tool. I also advise people actually listen to conference calls. If you have a longer term thesis in any of your stocks, there can be a lot of really good information in there. And a lot of the times the analysts may ask questions that you have. So you may be able to get your question answered as well.
Awesome. And so for our users who aren't already using conference calls, how would you outline some of your potential actions coming out of a call? Obviously there can be a lot of short-term volatility surrounding earnings, surrounding the conference calls. Do you ever take short-term actions based on that volatility, or are you kind of just waiting for things to settle down after a day or two?
Absolutely. I apologize. That's a great question, Jonathan. And you can use a conference call differently. In my example today, and the way I use these, I would say 99% of the time, is these are positions that I already have. Right. So I want to determine if the fundamental thesis of my trade has changed. I want to know if there's any unforeseen problems or unforeseen, positive events going on at the company. And if I don't work there, if I don't speak with people that work there often, then I may not know that. And the conference call gives you an opportunity to hear some of that if they choose to cover it. Now, again, a lot of this is going to be on how the business is doing, how they performed that last quarter. And then they also get to the section about their guidance or their forward-looking statements. And those are very, very interesting to me, especially if I'm a long-term hold. If my hold on a stock is much shorter, then there may be something that I'm trying to confirm or hear out of that call. And if the thesis changes, that might actually be my cue to exit my position. In this morning's case, that wasn't the case. I liked what I heard, and I'm comfortable staying in the stock now, now that I've heard the report from management.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan. And we do have a couple movers that showed up this morning with news catalyst. So I did want to hop over to the movers tool.
Okay.
You guys know the drill. We just open up that movers tool or the what's moving scanner workspace, where it just opens it all up in one place very conveniently. And you'll see here again, we've got the gainers in the pre-market set for the entire session. So you're just looking for those gaps since the previous day's close. And then all I did was I just started clicking through some of these symbols here. And what stuck out to me was ENTX. You'll notice that, you know, it was pretty much a gap and go here.
Monster,
and I liked it also because it had a solid news catalyst. Notice how it has the "Why is it moving" headline right there at the top. Shares are trading higher after the company announced the phase 2 clinical trial of EB613 met its primary endpoint. If you trade biotechs, you know that there's some key phrases in there that are very important, and you probably would have already been scanning for these phrases on your newsfeed. So you could have played this in the pre-market when the catalyst was announced. Or you could have waited for the open for that gap and go. Also, again, I want to point out the news tab there. So just reiterating, if you've been following us day in and day out, look at those blue highlighted headlines. So you can see the news came out at 7:30 a.m. Central Time on Globe Newswire, and that press release was automatically tagged by our AI system. It was down at the bottom with healthcare. So that's telling you, okay, healthcare is a category that causes these big moves depending on the situation, but this might be something that I want to pay attention to moving forward. Then we had a follow-up article just 1 minute later, and I think that follow-up, I actually don't know whether that was tagged or not, but we did have a nice sentiment indicator on that one. So this is tagged with biotech. Again, that would have been on my filtered news feed. And the news desk is just giving you a little nudge saying, hey, you might want to pay attention to this with that little up caret arrow there saying this is most likely to move the price of this stock upward.
Absolutely. And this is really good. You know, for me, I actually use things like this because, again, biotech is not my forte. That's not my wheelhouse. It's not what I trade all the time and what I follow all the time. So sometimes I really need that nudge, and it's nice to have that here. Looking over this news feed, when I look at this, when I see the move that this stock is putting in and I read the why is it moving, my next step when I look at the news feed here is going to be to do a little bit more due diligence and figure out what's going on. And the sentiment indicator here really draws my attention. This is going to be the first thing that I click on. In fact, Jonathan, because I'm doing this after the fact, I'm actually going to click on this article instead of the PR article, because this is going to give me a little bit more guidance and a little bit better summary about what's going on, and a little bit easier to read. So if you're familiar with playing PRs, as soon as they're released, you're probably waiting for the PR. What's cool here is that we give you both of those. So whichever one is going to help you in making your decision, you're going to have access to it right here. And also to your point, Jonathan, about the gap and go, this was actually a really nice one, right? So not only did we gap, we really didn't pull back in much. And then once we broke past the 9 EMA, we really kind of rode it. And when we first broke beneath it, we didn't set a lower low, right? It was actually a higher low. And that is, and we actually had 3 of those in a row intraday. And you can see the volume is still here. The stock's riding up, and we're still riding above that 9 EMA. So real easy setup here. This one, you know, we always talk about going through the list and finding out the stocks that have the good catalyst. In this case, it was the second one on the list today. It was the second one on the list today. Had the phase 2 clinical trial, had the gap, has the volume. Just real great play, real easy to find.
And people are always asking me about, you know, Jonathan, it seems like when I see these news items and then I check the stock, it's already up. Well, lots of times it is going to already be moving because it's very unlikely that you're the first person to check that stock, or there might be an insider or something like that, as well as the algos. But I just want to scroll back here. We're on the 1 minute candle aggregation. And if you could go to the timestamp of that first green candle, I just want to confirm, and this is in Eastern time. Correct. So that one candle right there, it moved. I mean, that's still a significant move compared to the previous price. But look at all the meat that was still on the bone there. You know, right. So let's say you missed out. If you're trading in the pre-market, you missed out on maybe 1, 2, or 3 candles. It's already skyrocketing. But I mean, even after it consolidated there around $4, you still had another push up from $4 to $5 there. So there's so many different opportunities to get in on this stock.
You're absolutely right, Jonathan. I think that's a really good point here, because basically this first candle here, this first initial pop, this first 1 minute after the press release was released, all right, we have a 53-cent range here, right? So the stock travels 53 cents in a minute, and you can see, even if you're not the first one in, to your point, look how much more meat is left on the bone. And in this case, this was quite a good catalyst, and the stock is continuing to run in the pre-market. So just to go back to your question of how can I buy this before the spike? Well, okay, I mean, if I missed out on that first 50 cents and I ended up taking a position at 230 or even 240, stock's printing 740 right now. I'm not gonna cry over a missed 50 or 60 cents, right? I'm gonna capture the movement that's going on right now, and you can do that with this setup. It makes it very easy to do that.
And notice too how this whole time it stayed above that 9 EMA pretty much. Up until it went just above $5. Yeah, just now. So you could have used that as your stop in the pre-market, because the question is, okay, so it can move up and down very quickly on low volume in the pre-market. How do I know when to get in or get out? And so that's where you got to have it in your trading plan ahead of time. You know, what defines me allowing myself to get into the trade, so I'm not just chasing the trade, and knowing when I am going to get out ahead of time. So as soon as it touches that EMA or it goes below that EMA, I'm out, or whatever your rule is. Just set that trading plan up ahead of time.
And just to further that point too, Jonathan, let's say you did do that. Let's say we took your example verbatim and we ended up stopping out when the price comes back in and tests that 9 EMA line. If that happens, you might be looking at that and say, okay, well, I got out at 4 and the stock's at 7 now. And that's true. But what you've just done is you've completed one successful trade on this. There's no reason why you can't take another position, especially if you have a cross through this 9 EMA and then a test and hold. The open here, definitely some price discovery going on, but still a strong open. This is holding its gains, higher lows intraday. I mean, there's multiple trades here. There's not just one.
Awesome. As always, I just want to encourage everybody to get your free trial at pro.benzinga.com. It's completely free for 2 weeks, no credit card required. You can check out all these tools and get to talk to me and Ryan. So it's always a good time. And then you can find more videos and webinars at pro.benzinga.com. .help. Of course, follow us and like us here on YouTube. And we have a bunch of recordings of fantastic guests that Ryan has brought on for webinars on our help site. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. And I think up next, we have a fantastic news desk person that Spencer's going to talk to.
Thank you very much, Mallard. I'm joined now by the head of Benzinga's news desk, Mr. Brent Slava, aka the Brentster. Brentster, what's up, man?
What up? How's it going, Spence?
Good. How we doing?
How's your day, man?
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, hey, I'm
Hey.
looking at the market like I always am, and we're up in most
Woo!
things. We're up
Green on
mostly.
the screen.
Mostly green. A little bit of red,
Mostly
but mostly green. You're
Bit of red.
You're seeing the staples are lagging. The value is lagging, right? Value is lagging, but everything else is pretty much in the green.
Yeah, and something that I just wanted to get on people's radar, if we haven't talked about it already. So all-time high in S&P 500 futures, 39.59 and a quarter. That was back on February 17th. We're in range. I think Joel would say we're in striking distance. No?
Yeah, he would say that. He would say that.
I try to practice my Joelisms every once in a while.
Striking distance. Yeah, he would say that for
distance.
sure.
We're in striking distance. I don't have the gravel as much. But you know, I try.
What would I say? What sound? What sound would I play?
Spencer's response?
No, I was trying to find a soundboard, a sound effect.
What?
These guys are smart. Okay.
There's a Joel soundboard. I didn't even know that.
I got a couple.
This thing's been a total dog.
Is there more? Keep going.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like a launch pad here.
That's what I got.
These are hilarious.
That's what I got.
I didn't know this. Wow, Joelisms.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Enough with the fun.
Enough with the.
Onto the news. Brent.
Yeah.
What headlines are you watching today?
So I was watching Rocket earlier.
Yeah.
RKT. Something that I noticed that I just maybe would bring up here. So Jay Farner, CEO, was on Fox Business, I think it was, a little bit earlier today.
Yep.
And then a few days ago, maybe last week now, I think he was on CNBC, and the stock moved.
Mm-hmm.
And not that he didn't say anything, he was making positive comments, but
sure.
I want to say that Rocket just kind of moves when their execs get out there and start talking. I think I've seen it like the last like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I don't know how unique that is to Rocket. I think that's pretty much like par for the course now, right? When an exec is on TV, their stock moves. And it used to be just Mad Money, just Kramer. Now, if they're on at all throughout the day, their stock can move. You really gotta watch that. Sometimes if you're like I don't understand why is it going up. Well, turn on the TV.
Attention, right?
Turn on the TV, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it really is that easy.
Also, still was kind of watching Roblox today.
Yeah.
Did you see the pre-market high, Spence?
Did I see it? Dennis was angry.
Really?
He was angry at the person, whoever they are, wherever they are. The person who bought at 4 a.m. this morning.
At $92.
At $92. He was angry for that person, I think. And yeah, this is a 15-minute chart, so you can see obviously well off those highs. It is notable that Kathy Wood bought some Roblox yesterday.
Oh, she did. I didn't even see that.
She did. She bought.
Nice.
Oh gosh, what'd she buy? A half million shares.
519,000 shares. Almost 520,000 shares.
Yeah.
So should I do the quick math on that? What size is that? Let's say $65 she bought it. I'm just guessing.
Right, ballpark it, sure.
65 times 520,000. That's like a $34 million purchase. I mean, it's nothing to scoff at.
Well, it's also nothing for them. It's nothing to scoff at, but nothing for them at the same time.
Right. There was an interview on with the Altimeter Capital, one of the founding partners yesterday on CNBC, and they are in the Roblox. They were in the Roblox listing before, and Altimeter is like, we're going to be in that investment for like 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yep.
Getting some high profile investors. And so, Spence, did you want to go over a little bit of like what was happening yesterday with the indications and maybe a little bit of education on IPOs in general?
Yeah, so we don't get direct listings too often. And Brent, you're a great person to ask this question. So day of IPO, how how does a direct listing sort of impact the way a stock will make its debut? I've pulled up the news feed here. I've filtered by RBLX. I'll zoom in for a second. But how do direct listings and the opening process play out differently than a traditional IPO would?
Yeah, that's a really good way to pose the question, I think, Spence. And I mean, just from the end of things for a reporter, for like myself, it didn't seem much different.
Okay.
The only thing I would say, and I actually jumped on the I actually jumped on Power Hour yesterday.
I saw you
and
on
went
there.
over this a little bit. So if people were watching that, we're going to go over this a little bit more today. But it really is, I think, good education, good stuff for people to know. The only difference I thought was we weren't getting an indication for the number of shares that were paired. We were just getting price indications. And if you heard me yesterday, you know that the value in getting the number of shares paired can give you a hint at how much time we have left until the open. You can basically, you can, I don't personally do this, but somebody could go into this kind of research like pretty hardcore and understand exactly how many shares given the shares outstanding, given the float, given what's going to be going live with the listing. The number of shares that will ultimately be paired. And when we're getting near that number, you could say like, okay, we only have 500,000 more shares that probably need to get paired. This thing's going to open in the next like 5 to 10 minutes. Yep. And that's at least from what we've heard from our sources, specialists on the floor who are working out these markets when these things are going public. That's the indication they seem to give. Every once in a while, somebody on the floor will give us, in addition to a price indication, they'll say like, we're expecting it to be open soon. And I'm sure they're just looking at the number of shares paired. And so, Spence, you have your pro feed up there.
Yep.
And you can see we have a few headlines. Roblox shares indicated to open $65 to $70, et cetera, et cetera. And normally with an IPO, we will get that price indication and then we'll get that number of shares paired. We didn't get that yesterday. It didn't really hinder, at least as far as I could tell, any lack of reporting. Basically, I was looking at the range that was on the spread for those price indications, and you could see it started at like $5. It got down to $3 at one point. It got down to $2, and then right before it opened, it was down to like $1 or so. And then I think the indication got down to like $1 or so, and it opened within the next like 20 minutes.
Right within that range. 11 minutes later, right within that range. That's $64 to $65.
Exactly. And so, Benzinga Pro is a good resource for this kind of stuff. If you like watching the IPOs, a lot of people just like to watch the IPOs. A lot of people don't want to necessarily get involved on the first day of trading, but it is kind of something fun to watch. And obviously does show some overall interest in the market, in my opinion. We have these, times where we get a ton of IPOs, and stock pickers like to use that as an indication as to what the overall market's like. And right now we have, IPOs are like the thing that Scott Wapner on CBC yesterday, he called it, I didn't really like the term, but he called it an IP over, where he's kind of saying like, our IPO listings going to be kind of fading out here pretty soon. We have SPACs, and we have this sort of trend toward direct listings. It's an interesting thought, I think.
There's no right answer to that question, because there are benefits, there are pros and cons to each, right? There's a lot of criticism, and just criticism of the traditional IPO process. There are problems with that process, but there are also problems with the SPAC process and the direct listing process, right? They all have their own problems, and they all have their own benefits. But I thought you meant that he was saying we've just seen like a rush of people going to market in the last 6 months. There was basically zero activity last March and April and May. And then the market kind of played catch up. So I thought you meant he was saying that we're going to see the flow slow down.
I don't think that's what he said, but I think that's I don't think that's what he meant, but that's actually a really good point. Just like, the comparison from last year was obviously nil. So of course it looks like there's a lot of IPOs right now.
And one thing to point out, if we're talking about like how hot or not hot the IPO market is, I always just keep one eye on this ETF, right? The IPO ETF, which sort of tracks the IPO market here, and you can see obviously it had a ridiculous year last year because these are all growth companies, but it has not had a great year this year, right? Not had a great 2021.
Do you know how this thing actually works?
Yeah, I used to. So it holds.
I've never looked at this before, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So it holds. Let's see, top of my head here. It holds both. I think it holds stocks they had to have IPO'd within the last 2 years. I think, right?
And so it's just tracking the performance of the stock that just IPO'd.
Right. It's a basket of recent IPOs. It rebalances quarterly, I want to say, but last I checked, Snapchat was still in here, right? Because I think it's
it's almost more of a function of how the underwriters did then. Do you know what I mean?
In a way,
the chart?
In a way, yeah. In a way. That's not applicable to Roblox, right?
Not applicable to Roblox. Direct listing.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Was there anything else on your radar that you're watching today?
Not really. So I could just show you. I mean, yes, but nothing to go over in just the couple minutes that we got here. The one thing that I could show you, Spence, real quick, if you pull up your Pro again, real quick, your Benzinga Pro, if you don't mind, sir, go to a news feed.
Okay.
And hit your categories button, Spence, and turn on. It's all the way at the bottom. Turn on your trading ideas news category. It's the second from the bottom there. And so, Spence, when we're kind of prepping for this and you say, hey, what are some things you want to talk about today? This is basically my first go-to. Reporters on the Benzinga Pro Newsdesk will tag the trading idea category if we think that there's an opportunity for either upside or downside following a piece of information that's being circulated. I look at this on a daily basis to try to get ideas.
Okay. So I'm seeing here today a bunch of stocks that Kathy Wood bought and sold. We're seeing Rocket, which you mentioned. Seeing CDTX. That looks like they must have had some news overnight.
Scroll down to yesterday, Spence. Look at this item on Kodak. It was at 322.
Don't do this to me.
I'm sorry. What?
Are you Kodak? What? All right. What is this Kodak headline? Tweet highlighting a link on their website.
Yeah, for this Kodak one thing, I guess it is. I think people were hinting that it could be something with an NFT. So just to describe this category a little bit more, the Newsdesk gets word of information being circulated all the time, right? And that's kind of our thing to sift through this stuff and go, okay, yeah, this makes sense, or this doesn't make sense, or somebody else thought this makes sense, and the stock is moving, and we don't really think it makes sense. And so sometimes you'll see stuff cross where we get it sent to us, the stock's already moving, and then we're able to, reach out to the company really quick or reach out to an analyst really quick, get some perspective on it, and find out why maybe it shouldn't have moved the stock either higher or lower.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's probably something that I should use more, right? I don't really filter. I do a very poor job of filtering my newsfeed, mostly because I'm really watching for movers. But this is a great, if you're looking for actionable, there are degrees of actionality, if that's a word, right? And that's
a good word.
I think I made that up just now.
But, I like it.
Yeah, actionality, and this is where the more actionable headlines are going to be posted, right?
Exactly, or else the reporter wouldn't have tagged it that way,
right?
And just to give you a little idea, Spence, on how maybe you can get better at checking these really quickly. I mean, you don't have to go click to your news feed, click to the category button, click the trading ideas checkbox every time. You can set this up in a workspace. Maybe you can even name the workspace trading ideas. And when you want to check it, just click over to it. Maybe you even give yourself a little calendar invite in your day and you check it twice a day at certain times.
Yeah. I definitely have too much fun and spend a little bit too much time messing around with my workspace and how I different tabs open and what's on there. I rearrange this every day. It's probably not a good thing, but that's a really good tidbit. Brent Slava is the head of Benzinga's Newsdesk. Brent, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Spence. Later, man. Later, everybody.
Guys, up next, SPACs Attack. We've got Al Gate-Maton and Ramesh Balakrishnan. They are the co-CEOs of UpHealth. The ticker there is GIX. They're going to be on SPAX Attack at 11:15. 11:15. That's going to start right now. So I'm going to get off the stream, redirect you to SPAX Attack with Mitch and Chris.